to all my loyal fans. We finally did it. We got to 10,000 subscribers. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. When I first started this YouTube channel, it was just a hobby, but later I enjoyed it so much that I remained consistent and set a goal for myself of reaching 10,000 subscribers. So, as my thanks to you, this episode is a special one where I deep dive into my personal life and find out how I became the man I am today. Quite frankly, the information I'm about to share with you is not something that I shared with a lot of people, but today I guess I'm releasing it out into the entire world. So, a good segue into the story would be starting out with my early childhood. I guess we'll go back all the way to 1975. This was the year I was born in Kabul, Afghanistan, which makes me 46 years old today. I was raised by a single mother, and to this day, I don't know the whole story about how my mom and dad split up, but my dad eventually made it out to the United States, leaving us behind. During the late 1970s, the Soviet invasion into Afghanistan left my mom in fear that I would either turn into a child soldier, either we would both be kidnapped, or at worst killed in the war. The country was pretty much unstable, and my mom decided to flee the country, so we went over to Pakistan, where we remained for 2 to 3 years, where we lived with my uncle, his wife, and kids. Since my dad was already in the United States, our family sponsored to bring us over as a result of the war. In 1984, we said our hellos to the United States of America. We arrived at the United States, and I was at the tender age of only 9 years young, and I started in the 4th grade, not knowing a lick of English. For most of my early years, I was picked on, and I got left back in the 4th grade. School wasn't really getting off to a good start, to be honest with you. And at the same time, having met my dad for the first time was great, but also weird. We really didn't have a relationship. He was my dad, but we really didn't have a bond together, and calling him dad and treating him as my dad didn't really feel natural. Part of me to this day resents him for leaving us when I was a toddler, but some things you just can't change, but the hurt still remains. School was always a bit of a challenge for me. In the beginning, I remember sitting at the corner of the room by myself playing with toys and surrounded by board games while everyone else was pretty much learning. Let's just say that the first 1 or 2 years was pretty rough while I started learning English and started becoming social with the kids. High school was a little bit better. I was in a better place socially, and I was speaking fluent English just like everyone else. But I skipped a lot of school. Naturally, I got held back many times, not because I was not good at school, but because I really didn't care. Life at home wasn't pretty stable. Oftentimes, it was hard to concentrate. My parents really didn't get along, and it just sucked. At the time, my father was in his mid-40s, and he was going through cancer, which really didn't help in my teenage years, coping with the new world that I was living in. To pass time, I was pretty much drowning myself in my hobbies, and my hobbies consisted of playing video games and playing with my model cars. So from 10th grade to 11th grade, I attended class, but I really didn't care too much about grades. Parent-teacher meetings were pretty much non-existent in my family, so I did whatever I wanted to do. Around this time, my father's cancer caught up to him, and just 5 days after I turned 18 years old, my father passed away. This was a pretty shitty time in my life. School wasn't doing too well, my father passed away, and everything at home was pretty much unstable. So around this time, I was still in 12th grade, but I had absolutely no chance of graduating anytime soon. So I pretty much spent most of my time not attending class, and I was spending it hanging out with my friends outside. So after my father passed away, I was sitting next to my grandfather, and my grandfather gave me this one pep talk that I will never forget. He said, "Son, your father passed away, you're the only child, and now you need to take care of your mom. It's time for you to become a man and start becoming serious about life." That's one pep talk that I will never ever forget. So in my family, I had a whole bunch of cousins, and my cousins were anywhere between 1 to 3 years younger than I was. But they were graduating high school and going off to college. It seemed like my life wasn't going anywhere, which pretty much sucked. I felt pretty shitty, and I felt bad for myself. Deep down inside, I knew I would be successful in life, so I really didn't care too much about school, so I really didn't put too much thought to it. So after my dad passed away, my mom decided that it would be best that we lived with my uncles. Financially, we were okay, but my uncles would pretty much take advantage of my mom, and we would argue all the time. Living with my uncles wasn't all that great. It wasn't any better than living at home with my dad. So it's around that time that I decided that school wasn't going to work out for me, so I completely dropped out of high school, and that was the last time I went back. I ended up getting odd-end jobs to support us, but I would always get fired out of the jobs, or I would get laid off pretty quickly. I was pretty much a horrible employee. For every job I ever had, I felt underappreciated most of the time. I hated every single one of the jobs I ever had. But around 1999, I got a job at a company called New Horizons, and this was one of my favorite jobs so far. Everyone was cool to work with, and I made a lot of friends. It was the first job that I really liked and I did really well in. Since this was a pretty big company, they had a cold calling team that would recruit new students into the school. So I started out as a cold caller, but later on I really didn't like my boss, so I quit that part of the job. I ended up applying for another position in the company, and I ended up becoming an instructor. As an instructor, it was much better, and I taught classes at that company for another year until 2001. And unfortunately, in 2001, we had the World Trade catastrophes, which started the recession. Oh boy, here we go. I got laid off once again. 2001 was the year that my life changed forever. I was pretty upset, I was pretty stressed out and depressed. And I think I finally matured and realized that I needed to make some serious changes in my life. Adversity can have multiple effects on a person. It could either bring you further down or it can make you into a better person. And fortunately for me, I didn't go down a dark path. They say everything that happens to you in life happens for a reason, and it's always a blessing in disguise. So one night, I was pretty bored and I went to this website called buy.com and I bought a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. In the book, you learn about 4 different types of people in this world. You have the business owner, you have the investor, you have the employee, and you have the self-employed. The self-employed and the employee are always in the rat race. The more money they make, the more money they spend. They're constantly going in a circle. Then I learned that there was the investor and the employer. The employer and the investor always have their money working for them. The money that they make with their investments pay for their toys, as well as all the luxuries that they enjoy in life. And it got me thinking. I had a huge change in paradigm, and it was at that time, after reading that book, that I made a decision for myself and a promise that I will never work again for the rest of my life again. That was a breaking point for me, and I did everything I could never to work again for the rest of my life. 6 months after collecting unemployment and having read the book and having done so much research, I realized that there was something called drop shipping. So I started my first online business, drop shipping sunglasses, and after drop shipping the sunglasses, with the profits that I made from that, I bought my own stock and shipped out of my house. With a renewed sense of optimism for myself, my life, and my self-esteem, I made more money in 3 months than the entire previous 12 months. And I thought to myself that this is something that I could do for the rest of my life. Fast forward a couple of years, I always had a love and passion for cars. I just loved them. I would always read books and magazines about them, and I would always fantasize about driving them on the track and on the street. So in 2006, I bought a brand new Mustang GT, and in 2008, I traded that in for a Saleen S281 SC, and every Sunday, I would go there and drag race with friends. But a year later, I did one of those supercar rallies where they allow you to try different supercars around a 30-minute drive. I tried out Lamborghinis and Ferraris. I think I paid about $600-700 to do this rally. But my favorite car out of all those cars turned out to be the Porsche 911 GT3. It handled amazing, it sounded absolutely dope. I quickly became a Porsche-phile and fell in love with Porsches. So after starting my business and busting my butt for a good 8 years, I sold my Saleen and I finally had my mated moment, and I ended up buying that same GT3 in 2009. I felt so good about myself, I felt successful, I felt accomplished, and this was my reward for taking the risk I did in 2001. And I felt I deserved this after all the hard work I put into my business. So pretty much from 2001 to 2010, I like to call that my learning years. The book Rich Dad Poor Dad opened a whole new world for me. Like links on the internet, one book connected me to the next book. My favorite books at that time were pretty much business and self-help books. From 2001 to 2010, I probably read more than 300 books. I just couldn't stop reading. I fell in love with it, and I kept absorbing as much as I could. I felt like self-help books centered me. It aligned my values and also developed my character. Meanwhile, the business books taught me that I no longer needed to have a job to make money. It completely changed my paradigm. Are you serious? Like, I can create a business with passive income and make money with other people's money if I didn't have my own? And I absolutely love that. The books that I read not only helped me in my personal life, but having only known my dad for 9 years, I really didn't have a father figure growing up. So most of the development I received were from the books that I read and also the seminars I went to. But unfortunately, in 2010, things took a turn for the worse, because overnight the Google algorithms decided not to deliver any more organic traffic to my websites. I made a pretty big mistake relying 100% on Google traffic for my websites, and I wasn't paying for ads. When it's good and free, at some point it's going to be taken away. Something to remember. I think around that time, if I can remember correctly, I was hiring some shady agencies and they were doing some SEO for my websites, which might have had something to do with it. Little by little, my sales went from 40 sales per day to 5, then 4, and eventually it grounded to a halt. So I eventually sold the businesses next to nothing, and all my equity and hard work was lost at a blink of an eye. The sad part of this entire story is that I had to sell the Porsche. My heart was pretty much broken. I absolutely loved that car, but there was nothing I can do about it. I couldn't afford it anymore. So for the next 3-4 years, I lived off of my savings and spent the rest of it trying to make myself better. I read a whole bunch of other self-help books, and I spent a lot of money on personal development and business to better my mindset about business and my personal life. I spent a lot of time thinking and a lot of time contemplating my future. This was a really uncertain and dark time in my life. What made things better for me was that I went to a whole bunch of seminars on business and personal development from people like Tony Robbins and T. Harv Eker. You might have heard of these guys. It made me feel a whole lot better about myself, and it gave me a renewed optimism for life and for business. And as a result of that, I started looking for a new business idea, and sometime around 2014, I started something called retail arbitrage. But after a full year, I got tired of it because it was backbreaking work. So while doing retail arbitrage, I wanted to manufacture my own product, and I thought this would be a whole lot easier because I wouldn't have to go shopping constantly to buy products and resell it. So after doing a whole bunch of research, I launched my first product on Amazon in 2017. Today I'm still selling the same products on Amazon, and this is how I currently make my living with my own private label products made in China. I import them into the United States, ship them off to Amazon warehouses, and whenever you order it using your FBA account, it gets delivered directly to you. This frees up my time, and that's how I have time to make YouTube videos for you guys, just in case you were wondering. So business was doing well once again, and I was getting off to a good start. But around 2016, I had to put down my dog, unfortunately. She was 10 years old, she was at the end of her life, and she was my best friend. I was also in a relationship at the time with a really nice girl, but I hated being in the relationship. We really never got along, and we grew apart after 5 years of being together, so I decided to end it. Since me and my mom came to America in 1984, we really never moved out of New York. It was the only thing that we knew. So we both needed a change of direction, and I decided it would be best for us to move to California. I really didn't have anything going on for me in New York anymore. I lost my dog and my relationship, so I thought it would be best for a new beginning. At that point, I pretty much sold everything, and I put all my belongings that I thought I needed in the trunk of my car and decided to drive out west by myself. My mom would later join me after I got to California. To be honest with you, this was one of the best experiences of my life because I traveled from New York City to California in my car. It was the best 2 weeks of my life. I had the absolute best time, and it brought a lot of reflection in my life, and I got to do a lot of thinking in that time and figured out what I wanted to do with myself. The kind of freedom I felt and the kind of renewed optimism and hope I felt for myself, I haven't felt in a long time. So 6 months after moving to San Diego, I decided to get another dog because at that time I felt I was pretty established here and everything was pretty much in order. His name is Rambo, and at the current moment, he's 4.5 years old, and I think that's how long it's been since I moved to San Diego. So I completely forgot to mention this, but before I moved to California, I visited San Diego a few times to see if I liked it. And while visiting San Diego, I would always drive on Highway 101 and I would see bikers with cool sport bikes, and I always said to myself that I could see myself doing the same thing. So fast forward to 2019, at the ripe age of 44, I got my motorcycle endorsement and I bought my first motorcycle, and that was a KTM RC390. And shortly after getting my motorcycle license, I started this YouTube channel, and it's probably one of the best things I've ever done. To be honest with you, I'm still amazed that over 200,000 of you guys from all around the world are watching my corny videos. Who would have thunk it that I have something interesting to offer? But anyways, I set a pretty audacious goal of 10,000 subscribers, and after 1 year and 9 months of starting this YouTube channel, because of your help, I finally achieved it. So thank you. So that's pretty much the story of my life, but I have a few last things that I want to leave with you. Number one, I love YouTube, and I think this is my future, and I want to do this for the rest of my life. Number two, what got me through my ups and downs were other people. These other people were from the books I read and the people I met. I won't take 100% responsibility for how I ended up here without people like Robert Kiyosaki's book, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad, or Tony Robbins and his amazing transformational seminars for developing my character and making me who I am today. And lastly, I would not be here with 10,000 subscribers if it weren't for you. Thank you so much for watching. I love all of you with all my heart, and until next time, ciao for now.